And good afternoon, Peter Mullen. That's your turn. You're on the radio again. How exciting.
Well, it is quite amazing how fast Tuesday keeps coming around.
Oh, the weeks, they blend into one, don't they?
They do.
It's almost time to say the C word.
It is, and it's
Christmas
only
is
6
the word.
weeks. 6
Oh,
weeks.
don't you
6
dare
weeks
do
will
that
be
to me.
6 weeks. It'll be all be over. It'll be Boxing Day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Boxing Day's more my favourite other than Christmas. But we digress. The GAPS for adults. GAPS diet. What's going on there today, Peter?
Yeah, we've talked a bit before on the show about the GAPS diet, and it's some great information about how the GAPS diet can be used not only for kids with issues, but also for adults as well. So I thought we'd segue into that a little bit and explain a bit more about the GAPS diet.
First, you want to strip it back and take it back a bit further and go back to where a lot of our problems can be sourced in the gut.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked a lot on the show, over this time period about how important the gut, that, as naturopaths, we call the gut the second brain. Because it controls so many aspects of our life. Up to 60 to 70% of our immune system is based in the lymphatic tissue that surrounds the gut and in the gut wall itself. So, we think of the gut as, being involved in digestion and absorbing nutrients and detoxification, etc. But it's also involved in defending us against invading bugs, hormone metabolism, but also conditions, we think about conditions like IBS and reflux and gut symptoms, but more and more we're finding that conditions like autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, may very well MS, even diabetes can be influenced by the balance of good and bad bacteria. So, a lot of health issues we tend to relate back to that gut health and gut balance.
I kind of envisage our gut, it's kind of like a big giant game of Space Invaders, isn't it? Like it's sort of there and all the baddies are there. We've got to try and get rid of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we come in contact with that many potentially threats or toxins that can come into our body, that having a healthy gut balance is really important in coping with that. And probably talking about diet, I always say, there's a lot of information you can get online. You can go to the local, chemist or supermarket, and you can buy up a heap of supplements. But unless you're really addressing the underlying core issues, supplements alone, or even, they're not going to have the impact upon your health. Like a lot of times I get asked, I've got this, what do I take for that? Or, this is going on, what do I take for that? And I always think, well, yeah, you can get something, you get some great, awesome natural medicines that are going to help with your symptoms. But unless you go and try and work out what the underlying cause is and address that, and a big cornerstone I always think of that is the diet.
So always a case of going back to the start and like, well, yes, you are where you are, but how do we get there to begin with?
Absolutely. And the gut gives us lots of clues. So when a patient comes to see, like, me, for instance, or a naturopath, often if someone comes in, say, with autoimmune conditions like thyroid disorder or rheumatoid arthritis, they might be on a myriad of different drugs and medications. So initially when someone comes in, we might start them on just some simple dietary change, low inflammatory diet, getting off gluten and casein. For kids with autism, not a lot of research or study behind it, but definitely kids with autism, autoimmune thyroid conditions, there's a lot of benefits can be had by removing gluten and casein from the diet. So we'll often start there. But if someone's got a really serious like autoimmune condition like rheumatoid arthritis, sometimes just those basic or simple dietary changes, getting off gluten, getting off dairy, cutting out alcohol, caffeine, sugar, processed foods, sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you've got to go to the next level down where you might actually also...
I think you lost a few people at that last but just between you and me.
Oh, look, it is a challenge. Like using diet to help recorrect. But diet and gut health is where it's at. So if someone's on a heap of medication, they're really keen to get off a heap of medication, safely. Diet's the best place to start, and that's kind of how this GAPS diet came about. The GAPS diet is one of the more serious diets that we'd recommend to patients. Like a lot of my patients will come in with fatigue, irritable bowel, and same as seeing any naturopath. And sometimes you only need to make a few dietary changes, get them onto some nutritionals and maybe some herbs, and they feel fantastic in no time. But for some people, where their immune system or where their health is, say if a child is suffering from autism or an adult comes in with severe rheumatoid arthritis where they've been told they're on the last of the medications they can try, after that it's just live with it, then they're a lot more desperate. So obviously, in looking for the cure. So that's where we might look at a more serious diet like the GAPS diet.
Well, we might come back and have a look indeed what the GAPS diet is comprised of, and you'll give your short thoughts on who should be taking part in it. How's that sound, Peter?
That sounds great, and and there's stages to it as well. So I don't want people to turn the radio off now because it all sounds too hard. There's lots of steps and stages in the GAPS diet that is going to be really beneficial for anyone with health conditions.
It's time to get down to the nitty-gritty. First of all, GAPS, what does that actually stand for?
So GAP stands for, initially it stood for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. So this was sort of put together by a doctor in the UK called Natasha McBride. And basically what she found is that there's this connection between, as we were talking about, gut health, inflammation, the balance of good and bad bacteria, and a wide range of children's disorders. In her instance, it was helping her child with autism, but also she's got a full-time practice in the UK treating people with autism, ADD, on to adults as well. And then over time, it's sort of become changed from just the gut and psychology syndrome to the gut and physiology syndrome.
It's good that they started with the same letter, or we'd have to throw
That's exactly
throw
right.
the acronym out the window.
So now the GAPS diet is very applicable to adults, not just children, and it's not just the psychological or mental conditions, or the mental health conditions we're seeing, such as autism, etc., but also the physiology changes like autoimmune conditions as well.
So let's put the GAPS diet together. What are some of the key ingredients, no pun intended, you will find in there?
Well, there's a couple of different stages, and this is what I was talking about before. If someone wants to know more about GAPS diet, it's worthwhile doing some research. She's got a great book you can read. And basically, the first stage is where you cut out a lot of inflammatory producing foods. So you'll cut out things like dairy, gluten, anything with additives and preservatives, anything in a package or container. So you'll include things in the diet like bone broths, and healing foods designed, because the diet's based around the concept. There's 3 goals: to heal and seal the gut lining, rebalance the immune system, and restore the optimal bacterial balance through the gut. And as we said, because 60 to 70% of the diet's around that area, that's why it's so important. It can take up to 2 years to really get the gut wall healed. And we've talked a bit before about leaky gut as well. So it can take 2 to 3 years to get the gut wall healed and encourage the growth of those good bacteria.
So this is a quick fix by no means at all, but it's there for the long haul.
But as I said, it's for serious. Anyone can do it, anyone that really wants to have fantastic health, but it's particularly for people that have more serious health issues. So the first 2 weeks is pretty restrictive, as I said. We take out like a lot of those foods that people consider normal part of your diet, and you are having soups and bone broths and chicken and vegetables and just very plain food. And then as you go, you start to, because it was based on the concept that a diet called the specific carbohydrate diet, and that was a diet developed prior to the GAPS diet, but it's where they found people with really severe inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, that there was also a imbalance of bacteria possibly associated. So they wanted to really remove starches out of the diet. So the GAPS diet sort of has come from that. So basically it's low starch, low carb initially, again, focusing on healthy fats, things like ghee, avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, meats that like a free range, and this isn't in the first phase. So the first couple of weeks is pretty much bone broth and soups and, really
a very back to basics.
Very back to basic diets. And then after that, you can start to add in, good quality animal protein. But basically, it's meat and vegetables, steering clear of a lot of your cereals and grains in the early stages initially, because again, those cereals and grains can get fermented, or the bad bacteria can use those cereals and grains as a sugar, as a food source. So, and down the track, maybe after a period of time, you might be able to introduce like some fermented grains or sourdough, rye bread or something like that. But initially, all of those things are taken out. So basically it's 2 weeks of, bone broth and soups and healing foods. And then after that, you start to introduce, a bit of a wider range of vegetables and even fruits restricted in the early stages as well. So
Interesting you pick up on even the fruit restriction. I'm seeing a lot of, in this diet, get rid of sugar.
Yeah,
is that pretty much one of the big themes?
That's probably one of the major things with the GAPS diet is initially you want to work at reducing the foods for the bad bugs, because when you've got an imbalance of good and bad bacteria in your gut, it's hard to take things to kill the bad bacteria, because then you're going to wipe out your good bacteria as well. So the idea of this diet is to, as well as working on healing and repairing the gut wall, it's reducing the food to the bad bugs so that the bacterial balance starts to shift over time.
Health and Wellbeing with Peter Mullen at 2NURFM. We do it each and every Tuesday. And Peter, look at him smiling away there, just loving life, loving the program, loving the advice you got for us. That is a matinee idol smile right there, Peter.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
I am having a good time.
That's good. Well, we always have a good time. We have some great conversations off air as well.
We do.
Unfortunately, we can't bring those to you. We really can't. We'd be in a whole lot of trouble. Look, the GAPS diet, which we have been talking about today, do you think this is something, we've kind of touched on this, is it something for everybody?
Look, I don't think necessarily it's something for everybody, but there's a lot of concepts from, the GAPS maintenance type diet, which is a really great way of eating, for good health generally, and a lot of it is getting back to, what our bodies evolved really over millions of years to be able to digest. So, as we were saying, the diet, so the GAPS diet consists in a couple of stages. Initially, it's quite strict, and then you start to have a bit more leeway. So, the diet consists basically of easily digestible foods that are dense in nutrition, including things like fermented foods. And, it can take a couple of years if someone's got really severe like mental health issues like autism or severe or autoimmune. It can take quite a while, but it takes that long to heal the gut, basically. There's supplements included as part of the diet. There's always probiotics as well as the fermented foods, vitamin D, and also vitamin A in the form of cod liver oil. Vitamin A, everyone gets a bit panicky about vitamin A because they did do studies where large amounts did cause birth defects. However, what they don't always say is that if you don't have any vitamin A, it can lead to babies being born, without eyes. So vitamin A is not the nasty that everybody seems to want to make it out to be, but vitamin A particularly is really important for healing the gut wall. And also vitamin D. So getting some sun and outdoor exposure is an important part of the GAPS diet, as well as maybe supplementing if you're low.
And as long as you do it responsibly, you can also work on your tan at the same time.
Absolutely. And the third process, or the third part of this program, is detoxification. The theory is that a lot of these kids and, maybe adults that their systems have just been so overloaded, maybe with all sorts of toxins or chemical insults, that they may just generally have poor detoxification pathways. So for these people, they're going to respond more to toxins and things in our environment than, say, someone else that's inherited a better detox pathways. And I think that's probably why we're seeing such a big increase in kids with autism particularly, is related back to this gut stuff, but these poor detox pathways. So when they come in contact with things like that are foreign to the body, they're going to have a greater impact.
Okay, well, it all sounds very good there, Peter. And again, like you said, it all starts in the gut, so and it can take 2 or 3 years or thereabouts to get the full repair there. So not a quick fix by any means.
Yeah, and it is a whole lifestyle. Like, it is a whole family endeavour. It is something that you want to then also make sure that your house, and this is a great process generally for all of us to consider. You want to then make sure that with your house you're all using natural cleaning products, that with your skincare you're only putting natural things on your skin. Like, if you're going to all this effort to improve and get back to real basics with your diet and spend the time to really heal and repair the gut, then you really want to be looking at all areas of your life. So it becomes a bit of a journey as well. So sometimes, what's that I was saying, that the journey starts with the first step or something, or the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Yeah, you're all around it, Peter. Not quite right.
Or how do you eat an elephant one inch at a time or something?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
You're not very good at this game, are you?
Not that one, no.
No, you need to do a bit of research before you come in. You didn't find any of those in your big book of research today.
No, there was none of those. analogies.
Nothing there. Look, Peter, some great talks coming up with you and your team coming up. Tell us about the next events.
So we do actually have a GAPS talk that we've doing tonight, but unfortunately that's fully booked out. It was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, not really any point in talking about that one.
Interesting though.
Will you do it again?
There is such an interest, in the new year for sure.
Okay.
For sure. The other, and we'd only have 2 more talks coming up this year. 2 more free talks. One on prostate and how to have a healthy prostate, and David will be touching there about natural health for people, even if they're undergoing conventional treatment for prostate cancer.
And I believe there is limited seating for that.
Limited
event.
seats,
Yep.
and also I'll be doing the last talk for the year on the 28th of November on managing stress and adrenal fatigue. We thought stress, particularly right on Christmas,
Of course.
thought might be a good topic.
A good one to finish on, that is for sure.
And some good tips of how to get through Christmas Day with your family members.
Now, make sure you bring it. We families have all got one, Peter, haven't we? Now, make sure you bring in some nice little goodies for the team here from Mullen Health. We're looking forward to a Christmas present for you.
I will see if I can put through a little hamper or something. I'll make
Okay,
up.
so we've got you on tape now.
I'll get my
saying that.
people. I'll get my people onto it.
Yeah, have my people talk to your people and
That's
they'll
it.
contact each other.
That's it.
And next week on the radio, well, what are we talking about next week, Peter? You don't know?
Next week we'll be talking about prostate.
Okay, so a good one
Prostate
next
health.
week.
Yeah, it's actually a really massive area because the old story used to be that most men, when they on autopsy, they find some degree of prostate swelling. So prostate and prostate inflammation really potentially affects every man. So
Something to keep in mind for next week.